Once upon a time, in the heart of the Carlithian forest, there lived a wayward witch named Moria. She was at a gathering where she was eavesdropping in on a conversation. Moria, hiding in the shadows, was never the stylish kind nor the one to bear original ideas. While she overheard the conversation of Orlinda, the village seer, speaking to the lord of the harvest, formerly known as Raoul Eris. Orlinda spoke of changing her hair into a platinum color. Moria couldn't wait to get home and summon her fairy godmother to aid her in the transformation before Orlinda could begin her transformation. She hurried home on her broom and summoned her, and the fairy godmother showed up in a flash. "Can you make my hair platinum?" she asked. "Why do you want that?" the fairy godmother asked. "Because I thought it would suit me. I want to be different." "It can be done, but it will be a process," the fairy godmother replied. "Fine," Moria stated. "Start it," she exclaimed. The fairy godmother started, and the hair didn't change much, but it lightened a little, and she told her it would slowly lighten with each sunset. Moria, though well known throughout the land for her extraordinary pumpkin seeds, which were said to hold the power to grow the most potent of gourds. The pumpkins they produced were not ordinary at all. They could enchant anyone who ate them, granting incredible strength, wisdom, or even eternal life. Naturally, Moria guarded these seeds with her life, keeping them hidden deep in her cupboard, away from prying eyes until they were ready for planting. Moria lived in a crooked little cottage, where her beloved black cat Daniel Thorn and a raven named Davin kept her company. Davin the raven was wild and adventurous. He often flew out of his cage, returning only when it suited him, like dinner time. One fateful day, he disappeared entirely, running off with an alyssum hen from a nearby farm, much to Moria's dismay. Daniel Thorn often remained loyally at her side, but spent most of his days sulking in his bed, barely uttering a sound. Now, it so happened that Moria's house had been invaded by a very clever small mouse. This mouse, though small, had big plans. It had overheard stories of the witch's powerful pumpkin seeds and longed to take them for its own purposes. One moonlit night, when Moria was fast asleep with her crystal ball in her hand, a very small mouse snuck into her cupboard, stole the seeds, and scurried beneath the floorboards of the crooked little cottage. There, she hid the seeds, believing she could come back for them later. But the mouse soon forgot about its hidden treasure. Seasons changed, and rain fell, soaking into the earth beneath Moria's cottage. Unbeknownst to her, the pumpkin seeds began to grow. Slowly and quietly, the vines crept beneath her floor, weaving their way through the soil until, over time, they sprouted into magical pumpkins, the very essence of her most potent magic just out of her reach. Now, Moria was a bitter woman who had a deep hatred for her brother, the Harvest Lord, and though they shared the same magical blood, she couldn't stand him. The Harvest Lord was always calm, always kind, and this only made Moria despise him more. She would often spread rumors about him, trying to turn others against him. But he was wise to her ways and would always respond with grace as best he could. His true attitude gave a good impression, far from what she tried to paint him as. One day, after hearing another one of Moria's vicious lies, he finally spoke a curse in return. "I hope your crops wither and bear no fruit, and the ravens eat your pumpkin seeds," he muttered. Though Moria never put her faith in the size of the mustard seeds, she believed everyone owed her, and she had false faith in her pumpkin seeds. His words struck Moria deeply, for she knew well how important her garden was to her magic. But what she didn't know was that her most precious crop, the enchanted pumpkins, were already growing just beneath her, hidden from sight by the very house she lived in. As the pumpkins grew stronger, so did their magic, silently filling the ground with power. Yet, Moria continued to tend to her garden in vain, wondering why her usual crops were failing, never realizing that the very magic she sought was right under her feet. And so, her brother's curse seemed to come true, for her visible crops began to wither as the hidden pumpkins sapped all the magic from the soil. Ravens would swoop down and pick at her withered crops. Meanwhile, Davin, the raven who strayed, started a new life with the alyssum hen who was brewed in a garden, not a coop. He was trying to put all of the magic of his past to bed. Daniel Thorn, on the other hand, still lingered in the cottage with the witch. He began to sense the power beneath the floor one evening. Though he rarely left his cat bed, he grew restless, tossing back and forth, his beady eyes watching Moria with a strange intensity. Then one day, as Moria stood over her wilted garden, cursing the harvest lord, talking to herself, "He isn't any lord of mine, and I won't even give him the honor of calling him such. From now on I shall call him what he really is, a ghoul." Then she laughed to herself, under her breath. She felt a tremor beneath her house. A strange vine broke through the floor, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. Her heart pounded as she knelt to inspect it. The realization dawned on her slowly: these were her pumpkin seeds. The very seeds that had disappeared long ago and blamed Ghoul for the menacing pumpkin vines. But how did they get there? And what power did they now hold, after all this time growing in secret? If they were ghouls, he surely wouldn't grow them here? Moria's mind raced, but before she could fully comprehend the situation, the vines began to spread rapidly, wrapping themselves around her ankles and creeping up the walls of her cottage. The glowing pumpkins beneath the house pulsed with a strange energy, and Moria could feel their power growing, more potent than anything she had ever created. Her eyes gleamed with a mixture of fear and excitement. At that moment, Daniel Thorne let out a loud hiss and scurried out of sight. He ran from the newly sprouted vines, clawing at them as if trying to communicate something important. But Moria, now consumed by greed, paid him no mind. She reached out to touch the nearest vine, believing that with this new magic, she could surpass Ghoul once and for all if she could wield it. As her fingers brushed the vine, an overwhelming surge of magic shot through her. For a brief moment, she felt invincible, like she could reshape the world at her whim. But just as quickly, the magic turned on her. The vines tightened their grip, pulling her closer to the floor as the pumpkins beneath the house began to rise, their power far greater than she could control. Moria struggled, but it was no use. The seeds she had so carelessly lost and the powerful pumpkins they produced had grown beyond her ability to manage. They were no longer hers to command. Suddenly, Davin, the raven who had run off with the Alyssum hen, returned. He perched on the windowsill, his feathers glistening with strange embers. In his beak, he held a single white feather from the hen he had fled with since she was pure and not of magic. As he cawed loudly, Moria realized too late that the raven had always known the true power of the seeds far more than she had. His attempts solely loosened the vine's grip and freed Moria. She quickly summoned the Carlithian fairy godmother to come to her aid like she always had done, and in the blink of an eye she appeared. In a final burst of magic, the cottage shook, and the floor split open, revealing the enormous enchanted pumpkins beneath. Moria's cottage was consumed by the vines, disappearing into the very magic she had sought to control. Her brother's curse had come to pass, though not in the way she had imagined. The pumpkins bore fruit, but it was not hers to harvest. Davin the raven and the Alyssum hen flew away, leaving the cottage in ruins, and the powerful pumpkins continued to grow beneath the earth, untamed and wild. The harvest lord, though up the valley in his empire, felt the shift in the magical winds and smiled softly to himself. Moria had played with forces too great to control, and in the end, it was not her crops that had withered, it was her. The Carlithian godmother had the pumpkins and vines tamed, but they remained in a frozen state. Sorcerers showed up and began to rectify the problem, and so, the legend of Moria the witch began to take far more notice than she wanted, with her potent, meaningless magic living on, not in her hands, but in the enchanted vines that grew endlessly beneath the ruined cottage from then on, forever semi-untamed. Some say the pumpkins kept growing, others say the vines overtook the village. But the truth still echoes. Tall tales destroy way more than dark magic could ever do. Moria and Daniel Thorne flew on her broom up to Davin the raven's place to spend a couple nights until the vines were completely gone. The vines shrouded her cottage into complete darkness, and the candle's flame could not illuminate the abyss that the vines brought forth.